So I'm gonna talk today about auxiliary viewfinders. I use auxiliary viewfinders on an awful lot of my cameras. Some of them, it's the only way you can compose and design an image. Other cameras, like on my Leica M3, it makes lenses available that are not covered by the frame lines of the camera. So on an M3, it covers a 50, a 90, and a 135, but I've got a little beautiful 17mm pancake lens on here, and by putting an 18mm Leica auxiliary viewfinder, I can now use this lens on the camera. So one thing that I also really love about auxiliary viewfinders is that if you wear glasses like I do, it makes a lot of these cameras very comfortable. For instance, on the recent camera that I did a video on, the Holga 135 pan, it has an actual viewfinder to look through. The problem is that if you wear glasses, you can't possibly shove your face in the little tiny opening on the back enough to actually be able to meaningfully look through it and get a good idea. So what I did is I put a 24mm Leica viewfinder, and then I masked the top and the bottom to absolutely perfectly cover the aspect ratio of this camera. And it's so comfortable and so bright and so easy to work with. Viewfinders like this are very expensive by Leica if you buy them new. However, if you look on eBay and Etsy, usually you can find something like this, and this is the all metal Leica version, for somewhere around $150 to $200. Anything more than that's crazy to pay. New, they're like $900, and that's bananas. I love the fact that I've got this beautiful Leica viewfinder on this plastic Holga camera body. But this one is one of my favorite. Leica makes some really good viewfinders. Other companies who make auxiliary viewfinders are companies like Voigtlander. This is a very inexpensive 24mm Voigtlander viewfinder, and I use viewfinders like this on cameras like this. This is made by Dirk Fletcher. This is a Virgin stereo camera that has been opened up to a 4:1 negative aspect ratio for 35mm. And I have two different lenses. The lenses screw on and off. This is a 65mm lens. I have a viewfinder for that. And I also have a 47mm lens, and I have a viewfinder for that. And they're really bright, really clean, easy to see through. More affordable than the Leicas, but I do think that the Leicas are built a little better. Another viewfinder that I really like is the ones made by Zeiss. Zeiss makes some of the most beautiful auxiliary viewfinders ever. Once again, buy them used. They're usually $200, but when you look through the viewfinder, it's so bright, so big, really easy to compose. And this one here is set up for one of my pinhole cameras that's so wide, you know, without having something like this, it's difficult to really kind of imagine what's going to be in the frame. Different companies have handled the auxiliary viewfinder better than others. This is a Photoman 6x24. It has an auxiliary viewfinder. This has got a Schneider 90mm XL lens, and it uses little masks like this. And they're labeled for the lens that you're gonna be using. You can see it says 624-90. And that just slides in the slot on the side right here, and you can look through and shoot. This is not my favorite viewfinder. Photoman made a really great camera, but the auxiliary viewfinder definitely fails. A much better...
Wait, why?
It fails. Why does it fail?
Yeah.
It fails because when you look through it, it's not a very clear image, and you can't see the whole frame. You're only really seeing the center 2/3. Whereas Linhof, this is a Linhof 617. I've owned 617s, I've owned 612s. Their viewfinders are absolutely gorgeous. You look through, everything's in the frame, and they are the most expensive auxiliary viewfinders imaginable. I mean, they literally cost like $1,000+ a piece. But if you're gonna spend that kind of money on a camera like this, you really wanna know what you're getting. These viewfinders are absolutely incredible. Another viewfinder that I use is this one here for my Linhof 4x5. In Linhof, in this case, the mask can be rotated depending if you're doing a vertical or a horizontal. And it has all these different lenses calibrated on here. So you can select, like right now I've got a 135mm lens selected. I use the red chart right here. And as I do the dial, you can see the whole thing pivots in order to take into account, you see how it's going up and down? Like this way?
Yes.
That's taking into account parallax when you're using a camera like this. And this is a really nice viewfinder if you want to do sort of, street photography with this type of camera, which you really can do, and I have done. So what I thought I would take a few minutes today and just talk about how I set up an auxiliary viewfinder like this for my work. So what you need is camera. Let me take this off. You put it on a tripod. Then you got to get yourself a ground glass, a little tiny chunk of ground glass. I've broken a lot of ground glasses over the years, so I always have a few little pieces laying around. Doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be amazing. So here's a little tiny chunk of ground glass that I got some gaffer's tape on. And this perfectly fits on the 35mm back here, just like that. And what you do is you open up the lens so you can see. Hold on here, let me set it to where I can do that. Open up the lens so you can see through the lens. And then, so you see through the lens there, probably not. You use a loop like this, a good loop, put it on here and get your top and bottom, and then you match that to your viewfinder here by putting tape. This one here is taped on the front. So I'm matching my angle of view. Generally speaking, I like to work with 24mm viewfinders, unless it's a really wide scenario like this particular Leica with the 17. The 24s are readily available and they're the least expensive usually of the auxiliary viewfinders for 35mm format. And I will just mask it, match it, make sure it's perfect. And then I'll move the ground glass right to an edge like this. Once again, get my loop, look on here, and then look through the viewfinder and see if that matches. So I then have a really good idea of what the left to right is and top to bottom is on my frame. One thing I did on this newer camera here, the Holga Pan 135, is this little trick and little tip here I'm giving you. On the back door, I put a little tiny dot right there of just a sticky stencil tape. And what I do is I put my thumb on that, and then I put my nose right next to my thumb. And then the viewfinder goes on my eye. That way it provides a calibration point, because I can look through this viewfinder in a lot of different positions and have the subject change in terms of what I think I'm actually getting. But by putting my thumb here and putting my nose to the camera, I'm assured that my sight picture side alignment is going to be absolutely perfect every single time. I also use an app on my phone called Viewfinder Pro. In Viewfinder Pro, I have every film camera, and there's a lot of cameras, programmed in there with all the different lens options and everything. And that way I can be walking around with my iPhone, much like a viewfinder, and scouting out images. And that's also, once again, a wonderful way with a pinhole camera or something like that to get a more precise view of what you're actually going to be getting. But for me, an auxiliary viewfinder camera, as someone who wears glasses on a camera like the Holga or any of the other cameras that you see here, is a tool that is absolutely necessary for successful work. Thank you very much for listening. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Now go shoot some film.